Hello everyone. We're going to start out here at the beginning of week 2. We have a new round of assignments to discuss, and we have a couple of submissions from last week that we will do a bit of feedback and review. So we will start out in logic discussing, we have two submissions here, and then I'm going to switch over to an archive from a previous month because there's more submissions there. I do always like to have as many submissions as possible, and so hopefully after watching this archive, you're encouraged to submit for next week, where you either submit your game capture video, or if you want us just to take a listen to your music. And then, of course, going into week 3, you will be starting a new composition and a new game called Angry Bots. And so you are also encouraged to submit for peer review there. So after we do our review here, then we are going to be switching over to a discussion of the new week 2 assignments. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to discuss overall the approach of this 2D platformer composition. Now that you have turned in your first round of assignments, you've turned in your composition here and also the looping assignment. We each week we'll load up the different submissions and we'll take a listen to them, go over their approach, and point out anything that we can identify that can be improved or changed or built upon. So, like I said, we have two submissions here. Each student submission has its own track, and over here we have 3 8-bar loops. These are the 3 main loops. Another submission down here. And then over here in this column we have 3 2-bar intros. And then over here we have 3 2-bar endings. And so these are our intros, these are our main loops, and these are our endings. The only reason it's set up like that is because that's how Logic imports it alphabetically, so it gets us set up quickly to go. So I'm going to start out listening to the main loops, and that will give us the overall idea of how things are going to sound. During most of the gameplay, the player will hear these 3 main loops, and they'll be constantly switching around. So once we get an overall idea, then we can hear the intros and the endings and basically see how the music builds up into the main loops and then resolves back down from the main loops. So here on our main loops, they need to be, first off, they are 8 bars long and they are set up to loop, which means that there are no gaps, there are no fades at the end, the music doesn't stop. It is the overall idea of a loop is whenever a particular file reaches the end of that particular region or that musical phrase, it is makes sense to return back to the top. It makes sense musically, melodically, harmonically, sonically, rhythmically, any other sort of adjectives that you can throw against that. You can identify all of the music is able to return back to the top and progress forward, because with each of your main loops, whenever you reach the end of one, then you basically have a 3 pronged fork in the road, where the music can either jump back to the top of that particular loop, or it can jump onto the next one or the third one. So melodically, harmonically, they all need to be able to progress and switch between the different cues in whatever order you want, or whatever random order is actually chosen by the game. The main loops need to feel like they are one whole song, the same instrumentation in all 3 of them, so it's the same band playing the same composition, and so instead of the instrumentation changing much from one to the next, it's all about the composition changing. So you'll have changes in your melody, you'll have changes in your overall chord progression, rhythms, bass lines. Doesn't need to be a massive change in each one of those categories. More than likely, your melody is going to provide most of the change. And if you have a melody that actually moves and varies a lot, then often you can get away with more consistency in the rhythm and harmony. So, what else? Consistent instrumentation, changes in the composition, looping, and transitioning from one piece of music to the next. That's main things that we are looking for in the main loop. Last one, I guess, would be mix, and we're looking for consistency in mix in all of them. So both of these look like they are set up, ready to go. There are no gaps in the beginning or end. The music seems consistent throughout, and of course, we'll take a listen to it to see how it actually works. These are 3 intros. The intros are meant to build into the main loops, and they need to be able to transition immediately and smoothly from one to the next. So the end of an intro is going to go directly into the beginning of the next main loop. They are 2 bars long. They are the same tempo and key, and will smoothly and musically transition into the main loops. They are going to build in energy, build anticipation, often hanging on some 4 or 5 chord or some suspension before they drop onto the tonic or downbeat of the main loops. And then these are our 3 endings. Oh, actually, I'm going to jump back over here. Both of these submissions, these 3 intro files, look like they are set up, ready to go, and they go all the way to the end. Things like this one here looks like there's a little, and maybe this one here, there might be a little rest or something right before it drops down on the downbeat. But you have to watch out. More than likely, that's not the case with these, but you have to watch out for any big gaps at the end of an intro that would cause rhythmic inconsistency as it goes from one to the next. And these are 3 endings. First and foremost, the endings need to end. They need to reach silence before getting cut off by the end of the file. You need to resolve the music, whatever pace and whatever energy that was happening in the main loops needs to transition seamlessly into these endings and then needs to resolve to a finality by the end of those 2 bars. You have a little bit of wiggle room on the lengths of these files. You might notice that it looks like both of these submissions are at the same tempo because all of their main loops and all of their intros are the same length. So being 2 bars at whatever tempo it is, they're consistent. But here in the endings, there's a little bit more wiggle room for the lengths of the files. There are specifications. The music needs to be 2 bars, or let's say this, it needs to end within 2 bars. You do not need a full 2 bars worth of music. You just need to make sure that whatever was happening ends within 2 bars. If that hopefully makes sense. Which means that you can end well, you shouldn't probably end just like on beat 1, where I'll have the main loops going, and it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, and then endings come in, and it hits just on the 1, stops. So often through those endings, they're 2 bars long, so you probably want to get at least through the first bar. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, and then often you can end on that 2, or maybe some folks go all the way through 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. And if you do need a little bit of extra room on the end, you do not want it to come to like a full stop. You want to watch out for stuff like this. Well, actually, it looks pretty. I mean, it does reach silence, so we'll have to listen to it. This one reaches silence, obviously. These 2 get pretty close, so we'll have to definitely listen to them. They could easily be perfectly fine, but you don't want them just to be hard cut at the end. So you want to watch out for that. And let's see. What else with the endings? These look good down here. They actually reach silence and hit and maintain silence all the way to the end. So I think that's in the overview sense. Those are what we are looking for. So actually, let's listen to each one of these one by one. Where did my headphones go? Oh, here they go. And we'll make sure that we can hear all of this. We'll start with the main loops and go from there. So main loop 1, 2, and 3. All right, so we hear I hear drums, bass, and piano line. Trying to get a stronger sense of the harmony. I hear drums and bass, and then the piano lead. So harmonic progression, chord progression, whether it's the piano along playing both the harmony and the lead. But you should probably have a couple more instrument layers because as it is right now, it sounds a bit sparse or thin overall. I would try for more variation, especially in the bass line, and you could probably remedy some of the repetition with the a chord progression that changes from one cue to the next. Melodically, I would work on the phrasing and the movement of your melody. So here in this first one, you move up the scale, up the major scale, but you basically working through the same rhythmic pattern each time. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and you go up and then you go down twice, and you basically follow the chord changes in that pattern. So I would just work on the moving the melody a bit more instead of relying on the repetition. Here you go, 1, 2, 3. Basically following and arpeggiating the chords. So move the phrasing of that melody around. I think there's a little bit more interest here in the third one. I'm mostly outlining the chords. And there's a little flourish at the end. Yeah, I should have a lot more of that stuff in there. And then more variation in the drums and rhythm to create some difference between those. The intros, let's check out those. Cool. The keys, the melodic lead works because it's always kind of moving in an upward direction. Could probably get more energy from the drums. It feels like the first bar and the second bar, the drums repeat the pattern. Like just a little fill or a roll at the end. It's almost like what you do there in 2. So even the bass is moving up and moving around. So I think melodically, those elements work, but a little bit more energy from the rhythm, and 3 endings. So I think the third one there works the best because it does end a little bit early. Let me space these out so we can hear where it ends. Yeah, the bass kind of gets cut off. So just leave a little bit of extra room for things to hit the last note, or even just end on beat 1 of bar 2. So like this one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and just kind of sustain on that, 2, 3, 4, 2, and just sustain on that beat 1 of bar 2. I think you have all of the elements there. You have the foundation. You just could kind of expand out with more instrumentation and more variation. So let's check out this one. And we'll start back over on the main loops. Go. I think it works. I think there's a good rhythm and energy to it, good changes from one to the next. So the instrumentation works well. Let's see, let's start, I'll go one by one. So you do have an instrument that's panned pretty hard to the right. We got drums, bass line, accordion. Let's see what this is. Pianos. So this is where the panning is a little bit too hard because the lead instrument is all the way to the right. So keep bumping my mic. Since it is the lead at that point, it should probably move to the center to create more focus on it. Plus, you have to consider where this game would be played, meaning whether they would be listening in stereo to begin with. If it's a mobile game, then it's very likely that they are listening maybe even out of the mono speaker. Well, it's not mono, but very close to mono because they're really close to each other. So anything of real importance, like the lead melodic line, should be more towards the middle. All right, so let's do the third one here. The other thing I hear is on the accordion lines, and some of the kind of reedy sounds, is that this first one doesn't suffer from it too much, but the notes seem a little bit late. There's a kind of a slow attack on, especially in kind of the little faster sections of the melodic line. So you probably, if anything, with a slow attack, should take all the MIDI notes and just drag them slightly, not even a 16th note, just a few milliseconds ahead of the beat, so that they have enough time to build up and actually hit correctly. All right, so that's the main loops. These are the 3 intros. I like the little trill back and forth on the accordion on that second one. So those have a solid energy and kind of an upward direction heading into the main loops of build up of some anticipation before they transition there. All right, oops. And 3 endings. Cool, that works. Great. So I remember we talked about this previously using dissonance in the endings. You expect it to resolve nicely back on the tonic and then use a nice bit of dissonance there because it's the ending of the game. You just kind of screwed up or messed up in the game because you lost all your health and died and it's got to restart over again. So a little dissonance like that works. All right, so yeah, I think the endings and intros work quite well. It's really just a couple of the mix things and timing in the main loop cues with solid melodic development, rhythm and rhythmic changes from one to the next. I do have to point this out because when I first loaded this up, I actually had them both unmuted at the same time and took a moment to listen to them. Or it actually took me a moment to realize that when they played together, there's the second one. You guys should collaborate because you guys, I'm gonna guess C major in at 120 BPM, which is quite common for this project. But when you line those up together, it just so happens that you can bring in both parts. And they'll still work, which I think is always funny. So this is actually what we're going to be doing with Angry Bots next week, where we have 2 compositions or 2 parts to a composition that are in the same key at the same tempo and running at the same time, and you can kind of crossfade and go back and forth between different ideas. So that is our 2 submissions that we have here. I'm going to switch over to the archive now because there's more submissions there that you can take a listen to. Plus, it gets into a discussion of your week 2 assignments. So if you have any questions, please let me know. And I'll see you again next time. And we have started out our second week here. You have finished your first round of assignments, and so we are going to take some time today to do a bit of peer review. We have 3 folks that have submitted their 2D platformer composition, and we will take some time to take a listen to that here in just a moment. So you have finished out your first round of assignments, which includes your 2D platformer composition and also doing a game capture to get things set up. Hold on just a sec. And this week you are going to create all of the sound effects for 2D platformer. So we will be talking about that. Also, you did a looping game assignment in week 1 and turned in all of your assignments, and we are going to take some time to discuss your new assignments for this week. Hold on here. There we go. And so the first half of our session today will be a review of your week 1 assignments, and then the second half we will be diving into the new week 2 assignments. So please let me know if you have any questions as we go along. Let's switch back over here to Logic. Like I said, we have three student submissions here that we will take a listen to. And I will start out by just going over generally what we are listening for in the assignment, kind of discuss 2D platformer again now that you have completed your round of the music. You do have an opportunity to do revisions on your compositions and your projects, and we'll talk about how that's going to work a little bit later. So as you receive grades and feedback, and you want to update or make any changes to the project, you can take all of the feedback and information that you receive and make any changes, updates to your composition, and then submit it again later. So we want the feedback to be constructive and talk about overall generally maybe some of the things that directions that people are headed and some ways that they can improve on ideas that are already there. And hopefully going through and having a discussion about the compositions will encourage other folks next week and the upcoming weeks to participate and do the same thing, so that we can have a lot of different examples to take a listen to, because for the individuals that do submit, of course, it's very positive and good because you get to, well, I get to go through and point and click at different parts and discuss it in much more detail, and in kind of a visual representation, and talk my way through the compositions kind of in a more clear manner overall. Everybody does receive written feedback, and once you do receive your feedback, you can ask questions, and it's kind of the start of the discussion about what you hear in the compositions and what we hear. But it's kind of much more direct in this manner as we go through. So for the individuals, it's great. But even if you don't participate, you get to see other ways that people approach this project. And the more submissions that we have, the more variations that we can hear. Because by the end of it, on my end, we have about a little more than 20 people in the class, so I get to hear 20 different variations. And the more people that submit here, the more of those variations I can share with the class. So you will get to see ways that other people are approaching, all sorts of good things and bad things that you may or may not have ever thought of. Definitely one of the purposes here is not only to help the individual who submitted, but to kind of show off all sorts of different ways to approach this project. So we'll start out there. The way that I have the Logic session set up here currently is we have 3 tracks with 3 different submissions. Each student has their own track filled with the 9 wave files that that you submitted. And over here are all of the main loops. These are the 3 8-bar main loops. These are the 3 2-bar intros, and these are the 3 2-bar ending cues. And the only reason that they are in this order is that alphabetically this is the way they import into Logic. So we'll start out over here on the main loops, and then we'll jump to the intros and endings. Once we listen to the main loops first, that kind of gives us an overall view of what it's going to sound like. And then, no, you can't see my screen. Why? I thought I shared the screen earlier. There we go. So that should make things clearer. We have, so let me do that again. We have 3 tracks with each student has their own submission and has the 9 wave files on it. Over in this column over here is the main loop, or the main loop cues. Here are the intro cues, and these are the ending cues. and they're only in this order because that's how they import into Logic. Then we are going to start over here on the 8-bar cues. On the main loops, first and foremost, they need to loop. So there needs to be no gaps or pops or clicks or any fades in the files. So these three are going to cause issues because there is a bit of silence at the end. So every time it loops around, you'll hear a little bit of silence. These look more correctly set up or more appropriate so that the end of the regions go all the way to, or the music goes all the way to the end of the file. More than likely when this happens, especially when it's exactly the same amount, or it looks like it's pretty close to the same amount of time, that typically comes in when you bounce and is this, include audio tail. You want to turn that off so that any extra, it basically extends out as long as there is some signal. You did a resubmit with the tails cut off, and I have that. And I have that. That would be the other one. So here. Here. This one. I think it would be this one then. Nope, other folder. This one. There we go. Excellent. Good catch. So we got that. And we have that. And there. Cool. Excellent. So, correctly set up. And so everything is set up to be an 8-bar loop. They all look like they are 8 bars. What else are we listening for? We are listening for consistent instrumentation so that it needs to feel like the same band is playing the same piece of music. Every once in a while, I will get submissions that have main loop 1, 2, and 3 sound like 3 different bands, or like they're spinning through different presets in Ultra Beat or something like that, where they're different drum kits and different lead instrument. Well, changing lead instruments is a bit better overall, but where the harmony and bass and rhythm wildly change. We want more consistency in the instrumentation. You can change the lead instrument. I always picture it as sort of like the group of instruments, and somebody is taking a step forward to take their lead, then they take a step back, and then the next cue somebody else takes a step forward. So if you want a piano versus a guitar versus a trumpet to play a lead, or synth A, B, or C to play a different lead, then that's perfectly fine to switch it like that. But typically consistency in the instrumentation all the way across. The next one would be then for the composition, that's where we're looking for more of the variation. So changes in your melodic lead, changes in your harmonic or your chord progression, variations in your bass line, changes in your percussion also, but probably not too strong. Depends on, you might want to, certainly you want consistency in key and tempo. So those basic foundations of your composition are going to maintain, so that as it jumps from one to the next, main loop 1 to 2 to 3, that it still makes sense. So maintaining elements of your, maintaining tempo and BPM, and then portions of your rhythm you can work with double time and half time to kind of up and move the pace up and down. So that can work rhythmically. So consistent instrumentation, but variation in the composition. Most strongly would be variation in your melody. We're watching out for repetition. That's one of the biggest things that I encounter in these 8-bar loops. They are 8 bars and they are going to loop on their own, so they're going to be repetitive enough by itself. So when you want to avoid any repetition within an 8-bar phrase, so you want to use the entire 8 bars to develop your melody, entire 8 bars to develop your chord progression, and you don't want to repeat too much phrasing all that often in the cues because yes, it's going to repeat enough on its own. Sometimes I hear a 4-bar phrase that just plays twice in 8 bars, or a 2-bar phrase that plays 4 times in 8 bars, or a 1-bar phrase that plays 8 times, which is quite bad because it's just going to get annoying by itself. So you want to use those 8 bars as much as you can, and then create variation and lose the player in the music as to where they are. All right. I guess the only other thing over here would be level-wise. Mainly, we're looking for consistency in volume and mix. Certainly from main loop 1 to 2 to 3, and then from your intros to your main loops to your outro or endings. You want to make sure that there is consistency all the way across. You ultimately have control over the final mix because all the game is going to do is play your files back at Unity. So whatever you bounce out of your DAW, that's the volume it's going to play back in the game. So as you build your sound effects this week, you should also have your music in there and listen to it so you can balance your sound effects against your music. Maybe if you are doing another pass on the music, maybe you take the original sound effects from the game and you put them in there to have some sort of reference when you mix, so that you can, or take the audio from the video, which is the original sound effects, and play that in there so you get a sense of a minute's worth of gameplay, how that's going to sound against your music. So you ultimately have control just as long as you're considering the volume of your sound effects versus the volume of your overall music. Intros and endings. The intros need to build up into the main loops. They need to create excitement and anticipation heading into the main loop. Sometimes what I will hear is basically a 2-bar loop. If I can set up a particular cue and have it play around and around over and over again, and it still makes sense, then it's not going to work as an intro. When an intro should build, so if it were to build over the cue and loop, reach the end and go back, it would fall back down in intensity. It would build in intensity and then fall back down, and build in intensity and fall. That is more appropriate. You want to avoid an intro that is just consistent all the way across. So you want to use the percussion mainly to build up energy. You want to use the rest of the instrumentation, harmony, melody, to also build up. Which also means that you need to use the same instrumentation in your intros as you do in your main loops. Sometimes I'll have like no drums in intros or endings, or the melodic lead line that's in the main loops doesn't exist in the intros, so it just kind of jumps up out of nowhere. Those are things to consider and probably avoid overall. So overall, these intros look a bit lower in volume in here. It all depends on what instruments are here versus here, but we want to make sure that the end of any one of these cues is pretty much at the same level as the beginning of a main loop. And that is mostly going to be, as we listen to it, we'll be able to identify. We want to make sure to avoid intros that end, and more than likely these are going to be fine. These look like they probably have like a little rest right before they drop into the intros. So that could be okay. But we want to make sure that like rhythmically they don't stop for too long because it'll just create silence before they head into the main loops. Seeing as this one looks like it extends all the way through, and I'm going to guess that rhythmically these still make sense. But of course, we'll have to check it out. And the endings. For most of all, they need to end. They need to end in silence. They need to reach silence before the end of the file. So you don't want the music to be cut off by the end of the file. That means that the ending cues, the music needs to end in 2 bars, but the file can be a little bit longer than that. Sometimes people end the music earlier than 2 bars, which is fine. So maybe you could, what I hear a lot of times is ending on beat 1 of bar 2. So you'll hear 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and it'll just sustain on beat 1 of bar 2. Or let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, and it'll just sustain through that point. So you really end the music a bit earlier overall. That's one approach, so that you have enough room to sustain before and it reaches silence before the end of the file. The other way is to have the music extend all the way through the 2 bars, and then use a little bit of extra room at the end of the file to allow anything to fade to silence, instrument decay, cymbal crash, things like that. Only the endings can actually be longer than how they're specified. And it's only because it's the end of the music, and it needs to reach silence so that basically it can fade to black and then fade back in when the game starts over again. So 2 bars worth of music, a little bit longer. Music needs to end. It needs to resolve whatever you were doing in the main loops. You use the ending to resolve that piece of music. So whatever was happening with the drums often do a last kind of roll or fill to a final cymbal crash. Bass line returns and resolves back to the tonic. Chord progression resolves back to the tonic. Melody resolves back to... Everybody hits that last final note, and it sustains finally to silence. Or maybe you have to do a little manual fade to silence. Let's see. These 3 look good. It depends on how long. Like if a cymbal crash is actually sustaining this long, you could probably cut these down. It all depends on what we end up hearing. But if there's just silence at the end, it's a bit too much. These look like they're pretty good. They look like they're headed towards silence. But even then, you want to make sure like stuff like this doesn't get cut off if that is a little bit of like cymbal crash at the end. These look like they are pretty close. And so as long as they just don't get cut off, they'll be fine. So we'll take a listen. And again, consistent instrumentation. A lot of times I'll hear that there's just no drums in the ending cues. It's like the drummer just left the studio. So we want to avoid that. All right, let's start out here with our first one. Please let me know if you have any questions as we go. Here mentioned in the chat. Sorry for not mentioning the revision versions in the submission. That's as long as the folder names. Where did I go? Like if you make a change, this is the way it ends up coming off of FSO. So if you just put in here like update or something, I'll know which one to go after on the actual file itself, or the folder. Sorry, the folder itself. All right, main loop. Let's start here. Please let me know that if you can't hear me or you can't hear the music or something like that. That should work. Um, Rhythmically and energy-wise, the energy fits the game overall for a kind of a high-energy game. It's a bit kind of dark and minor overall. I would push it more towards the sci-fi alien invasion side of things versus the kind of happy kind of positive or lighthearted kids kind of game. So I think one thing that concerns a little bit is the level difference. There seems to be quite a bit more energy through this first cue, and I think it's the bigger percussion. So I would probably bring these two up a bit more to compete with this one. I like this little phrase at the end, but I typically warn against stuff like this. I kind of put this in the same category as a drum fill at the end of each cue, where there's a very identifiable little phrase that happens at an end of a cue. And the kind of concern is it's going to play that same way every single time. So since it's varying between three of them, it's a little less often, but if like I have it as a loop here, it comes around every single time. So typically what they do in this case with a drum fill or a cymbal crash or a phrase like this, maybe they want to add it every fourth time or something. So they'll actually pull that little phrase out into another file and won't play it except for every fourth time or something. So nothing is incorrect about it, but it is sometimes a concern for any phrases. I always like to point that out for any phrases that are quite identifiable like that. So here I watched the repetition in the melodic phrase there, mostly because it does the similar thing here. Now there's just a change in the last bar here. So two bars. I'd probably change the whole second phrase of main loop 1 so that there's a bit more variation in the first half and second half. I'd also focus on the melody a little bit more, not like bring it up more forward in the mix. It is really obvious here in this last two bars, but it could be more present through the rest of it. And I think that kind of comes with the mix portion also. This one has a more obvious or straight ahead melody, or identifiable, probably a better way of saying it. But it does kind of repeat the same phrase. So just change that phrase up a little bit. So watch the repetition through some of these cues. Balance these two balance these two cues against the main loop 1, which I think is a bit more appropriate in the mix. Let's do 3 intros. So you're going to need all of the instrumentation that you used here. And again, that's a much stronger level in the main loops. These feel like 2-bar loops, because I could just sit here on this loop and it makes sense. It needs to build, so drums need to build in the second half, like a snare roll. Use the lead line and some of the other instruments from the main loops to also build up, typically going in an upward direction, but all these. I feel they could actually work as loops. So let's try 3 ending cues. Cool. So compositionally, those work just fine. And this is the kind of stuff that you need to do over here in the intros. Having that, the drums, having the lead line, all of that stuff that is present in the main loops, helping the ending cues. The only thing with the ending cues is they need to actually end. So I think you hit the last chord. You hit the last chord there by the end of bar 2, but you do need a little bit of room just to have that chord sustain out to silence. I like the third one here that feels like the rhythm is kind of falling apart. But the cadence of each one of them makes good sense, and it resolves back to the tonic. So compositionally, it works quite well. All right. So there's a couple of things to work on. I think the intros could probably use the most improvement. Some tweaks to 2 and 3 over here. Not much needs to change except for the very end of the ending cues. So nice work. Good stuff to start out with. If you have any questions on that, let me know. Let's go ahead and try the next one here. We'll start with this main loop. And to go on to 2. Another one that works very well for the energy of the music. I think the melodic lead lines work well and develop nicely in each cue, and then from one cue to the next. Just a couple of small things to point out. I like the rhythmic change in 2. My only warning against it is that it's different enough from 1 and 3 that I really know when I hit it. Like, this kind of speaks against the idea of where you want to lose the player in the music, so that it all feels like one constantly evolving thing. But I know once I hit main loop 2, it almost feels like it should be like another stage of the game. Like, it's the same instruments and all this, but this could be like another, like the water level or the ice level or something like that, where it's in the same world but has enough change to it that it becomes identifiable when you hear it. I think 1 and 3 rhythmically are consistent enough that it feels more similar to each other. 2 stands out just a bit. Not to say that it's incorrect by any means. Then the other thing I heard in 3 is the end of 3 almost feels like an ending, like it wants to end. I would just continue the rhythm through it, just in that last bar or so. Like, it just feels like you're trying to end at that point. Then the only other thing that I hear across all of them is the mix. I think and it might be the headphones. It would have to listen to it on multiple systems, but I think the lead does stick out a little bit too much, or I guess it's more of the plucky lead that seems to be more on the left side, and the organ that seems to be more on the right side. I'm losing the organ. It's not just because I only wear one headphone either. Like they have countering melodies that are playing nicely against each other, but there's so much strong attack in the pluck that it kind of overshadows what's happening in the organ. So I think it's a balance between those layers, and yeah, it seems like there's some of the drums might seem a bit thin overall. So like I have strong highs and high mids, but I'm missing more kind of that lower mid elements. Like the bass line. Where's the bass line? Yeah, I hear the tonality of the bass line, but like the kick and the bass seems like there's something missing down there. Compositionally, I think it works quite well. I think there's just kind of a rearrangement or reordering of the melodic lines. Cool. I think the third one has all of the components. Well, yeah, it has all the components that we're looking for. The first one, okay, has a little bit of drums. I'd in all three of these, I would start the drums earlier, if not from the very start. I think, again, 2 is a little bit too different. I think that the intro 2 is going to sound best with main loop 2, but it may not work very well against the more straight ahead beats or rhythms of main loop 1 and 3. Oh, come on. Line up there. There we go. So here's intro 2 to main loop 1. Yeah, it's could be a little. I think if you're establishing the drums a little bit sooner, because you take off and takes off in such a nice pace, that you need to build people up to that a little bit sooner through the intro cues. So more drums from the start. The other would be that main loop 3 uses the lead line. That was it uses the lead line. That's what I was going to say when I first heard intro 1, was that it's just piano. Oh, and organ. And then there's the drum fill at the end. So you should use the lead line, organ, piano, drums, bass, all of the elements through the intro cues, and pick and choose how you want them to intro. 3 endings. Cool. Again, I think I like ending 3 because it's still a little bit at that that pace. You introduce or you maintain a little bit of that rhythm and then resolve it through ending 3. This one almost feels like it's too sudden of a stop. Like I hit that big crash, which it may not be completely incorrect because, or may not be completely inappropriate because, again, you did just end the game. The game, you lost control. So a more of a sudden ending could work. Again, I think all intro, ending, and main loop 2 play most nicely with amongst themselves, and so there's a bit more concern about intros, main loops, and endings 1 and 3 working with 2. So overall, I like the vibe. I like the pace. I like the melodic development. Mostly the things that I'm talking about are not compositional. It's more of how it's going to play back in the game. So a use of instrumentation through intros, main loops, and endings, and rearrangement of the mix through the main loops. And yeah, those are some of the highlights there. All right, again, good work. And we'll do the third one here. Starting out with the main loops. All right. I think compositionally, I think it works quite well. I think it hits all the points. 8-bar loops that are set up to loop correctly. There is variation from one cue to the next. Solid melodic development through the cues. There's a change in the melodic content in the first 4 bars and the second 4 bars, and then change from one to the next. Let's see, there's not much to update or change. I think it fits the overall vibe of the game appropriately. There's change in the drums from one to the next. Let's see here. So I think it will work out and is appropriate for the type of the game. Hold on just a sec. So let's go ahead and check out the intros and the endings. So I would probably use, first thing I heard here was use of the lead line, but it does end up coming in the second bar. I could have a little bit more build, although I do like the kind of the rest and the clap in this cue. This one feels more like a loop. And it could have a little bit more build towards the end of it, where these have, and then there's a little bit from the snare roll or the fill, but it could just kind of use more of the instrumentation to kind of go in an upward direction to build. Let's try the 3 endings. These look like they're set up correctly. That works. As long as rhythmically that feels sped up compared to the other ones. Yeah, the tempo feels off on this one, but I do like the dissonance in it, and like again how it kind of feels like it's falling apart. This one I think has the strongest resolution. Like you would probably prefer to resolve back to the tonic on this one. So I'd say ending 2 works, although I like the idea of 3, but rhythmically it feels a bit off. All right. So just a bit to tweak through the intros and endings. I think the main loops work out quite well overall. So that should give everybody some good insight and direction in how they might approach their compositions. If you need any clarification, here in the chat, I just want to verify. Take a look at any of the game capture uploads. I believe that is for the game capture assignments, just to make sure that I'm understanding. The game capture assignments, which happen for this week, that will be, you'll have the opportunity this week to turn in for revisions, and we will take a look at those for next week to give everybody the chance to submit for those. So let's go ahead and switch gears here. That is what we're going to do each week in our first class of the week. We will go back and discuss the previous week's assignments. So next week you will have completed the sound design and do a video capture of your 2D platformer game composition for the 2D platformer game project, and we will take a listen to kind of like the final version of it. So that's how the class will generally flow, where the first week you will do the composition for the new game project. The second week you will do all of the sound design. You will take your music and sound effects and put them into the game to test out how they actually play back in the game. You will also do a video capture of that process, where you will show your music and sound effects working in the game, and use a quick time to create a video of how everything looks and sounds. And then week 3, we'll start again on the next project. Week 3, you'll do the game composition. Week 4, you'll do sound design and video game capture. So that by the end of the month, you will have 2 fully working Mac games with music and sound effects implemented and working in the game, tested and revised with a video video capture of everything playing back in the game for demo reels and portfolios and whatever and however you'd like to show off and demonstrate your work. Because ultimately, music composed for a game is best shown off in the game itself. I'll see every once in a while somebody will put up a piece of music and like title it "Game Music Loop," and you listen to it and you say, "That's amazing! It sounds like a great piece of music," but I really have no idea the context and how it's actually going to sound in the game. So, and that can even go more so for the interactivity and things like the sound effects and the switching of intros and main loops and endings. You don't really get a sense of how all that's going to sound. Like if you just sent a potential client and say, here's a link to 9 SoundCloud pages with 9 individual WAV files on them. Well, here's my 3 intros, 3 main loops, and 3 endings. That will only go as far, or maybe you put them all in a playlist on one SoundCloud page. That'll only go as far as showing off the music, but it doesn't really give any context of how appropriate it sounds for the game. And so that's what we'll see next round. We'll see music and sound effects working in the game in a video. And what I end up typically finding out is that the final version of it is greater than the sum of its parts, where individually it may sound less than outstanding, which when you put it all together, it ends up becoming a pretty cool thing to show off. So that is where we are headed. So let's talk about week 2 and discuss the next round of assignments. Hopefully you've had the opportunity to download everything from FSO and take a look at what is upcoming for this week. So we've done the first half of the audio soundtrack. Now we will finish out the soundtrack for 2D Platformer by creating the sound effects. And there's a total of 18 sound effects for this game. They are actually quite straightforward in their design, and a lot of them can be done with vocals, with your voice, because they are what are often known as exertions or grunts and vocalizations, where they are things like jumps and impacts and punches and taunts and elements that are sort of dialogue and sort of sound effect too. So I'll show you what I am talking about as we go here. So when you download this assignment, you receive... What do you receive? You get a PDF that looks like this. And this PDF describes the sound design that you will be doing for 2D Platformer, and where you might find the sounds, how you might organize and approach this session, and what the final result's going to be. So project overview is a lot of what I'm going to be discussing right now, with screenshots of how you might set up the session. Sourcing the sound effects. Westar Music and freesound.org. You are familiar with Westar Music. You used it for the looping exercise. You might have used it for other classes. And Westar Music not only has a solid music library, but there's also a good sound effects library containing Hollywood Edge and Sound Ideas libraries, which are quite popular industry standard sound effects libraries. Lots of very good stuff in there to find and download and use. Freesound.org is also a very large crowdsourced sound effects library online. It's free and open, and there are a lot of sounds on freesound.org. There are also a lot of very bad sounds on freesound.org, but there are also a lot of very good sounds. So you have to wade through the bad stuff to actually find more appropriate good stuff. And for the types of sound design that we're doing, you'll find a lot of good material there. So you can record your own, you can use sourced sound effects, Find them in the greater wide open internet. Generally, like freesound.org has some elements of Creative Commons, so you want to check the usage and rights. Now, for the project, for educational purposes, it's perfectly fine to probably use most everything, especially if it's on freesound.org or Westar. I know you can use Westar, but check the license. But not so much for the project as much as for demo purposes and portfolio reasons. You always want to make sure that you're sourcing material from correct locations. So, sound design, then there is a screenshot and a description of each of the sounds that you will be creating. So you can reference what we are talking about here. But what I'm really going to get to is the asset list here. And these are all the sounds that you will be creating. I would highly suggest that you look through all of the sound effects and go search out groups of sounds, bring them back and edit them versus going sound by sound. Basically, sometimes people go through and they say, okay, I need a bomb explosion. So they'll go find one bomb sound, they'll bring it in, they'll edit it, and then they'll go find another layer and they'll bring it in and edit it. And then they'll bounce it and name it, and then they'll say, okay, I need bomb fuse, and then they'll go find a sound and edit, and basically they'll go around and around and around. I would suggest that you find that there are a lot of necessary bomb sounds. There are a couple of arcade sounds, and figure out what you can just record with your voice and what you have to go search out. Then just take some time and go find 20 audio files that represent all of the sound design that you're going to need, all the source material, and then bring it back in, edit it, and create groups of sounds from that. It's often a process to go search, edit, name, as opposed to searching everything, editing everything, and then going and naming everything. Depends on how you want to approach it. Here in the chat, what if all your sound design audio files come from Westar, but is layered, but you layered them to create your own unique sounds? Absolutely. Well, the Westar library is you have full rights and license to use those for educational projects done at full sale. That's the reason we have access to it. So yes, library sounds are still very often used in the industry. Everybody would love to go out and blow up their own car to record all sorts of sound effects, but I would encourage you not to go blow up your car or anything like that. Of course, everybody would love to have individually recorded sound effects, but that's not always the case. That's why libraries exist, and for our purposes, the Westar library is just fine. So then the next suggestion in doing the sound design for this game is to reference all of the original sound effects from the game in building your own sound design and doing your own sound design. So, for example, I'm going to go get a copy of of 2D Platformer, and you get the original sound effects. So let's see. Here is a copy of 2D Platformer. And hopefully you've taken the time to place your music in the game and test everything out. In order to do that, you can click on the game application and right-click on it and choose Show Package Contents. That's going to give you a folder called Contents. And all of your sound effects, both music and all of your WAV files, both music and sound effects, need to go into a particular location here. So You can go to Contents. We can go to Data, go to Streaming Assets, and you'll find two folders. More than likely, your music folder will be blank, or you have already placed your music files in here and tested them out. The sound effects folder is filled with all of the original sound effects. You eventually are going to replace these with all of your own sound effects. But as you are designing your new sound effects, I would import these the original sound effects as reference in your Logic session. So I'm going to create a brand new Logic session. We can close that. We don't need to save it. And I'm going to create a Logic session with just one audio track for now. And I'm going to take all of the original sound effects from the game. I'm just going to drag them in on a track. I'm going to place all of them on one track. They're all in different sample rates. So you're going to want to convert the files. More than likely, your session is 16-bit 44.1 or some sample rate and bit depth you always use. So convert all of the files so they all go into the same sample rate and bit depth. And then you're going to take some time to organize all of these. You probably want to separate them out, give yourself a little bit of room. You're not going to need to watch me do all of that, but just separate them out so that you have a little bit of space to work from as you build and edit. Then I would just create a whole bunch of blank tracks right below that, right? 4 or 5 different layers. And you're going to use these layers to build your own sound effects. You can reference the original sound effects. Now, at the end of everything, when you're done, this is going to be muted or deleted or just not included in your bounce. You're not actually going to bounce the original sound effects into your sounds or not use them as a layer or anything like that. It becomes very obvious. We hear them in the background of another sound. So just mute this out. But while you are building everything, use it as a reference. You can see how long the audio files might need to be, how loud they might need to be, the name of the file, the format of it, the overall shape of the waveform, like the envelope of the sound. You can listen to it over and over again so that you can get a reference of what it sounds like. Just all of the basic specifications of the sounds. You have some sort of template to work from. So just bring them in and do your own sound design at that point. Then you go out and search a whole bunch of sounds, bring them in and start editing them down and reference them against the originals. So we are going to go here and listen to the sounds. We'll just talk about each one of them, so you know generally what we're looking for. Of course, play the game a lot so that you can get a sense of where the sounds are. Like, open the game and have this folder open and like hit play on a sound and play the game until you hear that sound. You're like, oh, okay, I know what that is. And so you just get the connection of what they are in the game, so you know what they might end up sounding like. Okay, so there are a couple of different bomb sounds. One of the pickups in the game is bombs it's like one of the parachutes that comes down. You can pick it up. You right click and the character drops a bomb and it goes off after about a second or so. There's enemy death, gunshot, health pickup. Some of these are just variations. Like there are 3 enemy death sounds, 3 jump sounds, 3 ouch sounds, 3 taunt sounds. So I don't know exactly how loud these are going to be. Typically, let's see if I can control this a little bit. See if I can turn this down just a tad. Now, the first one here is when the bomb explodes. This is a very big explosion, very loud, and it's like 7 seconds or something like that. And that did not seem like it broadcast. Hold on. Let me try that again. Let's try. Oops. Let's try this. All right, so about 7 seconds long. Most of that's going to be masked after a few seconds by all the rest of the sounds in the game. Bomb fuse. This is once you drop the bomb, it does not immediately go off. It takes about a second to go off, and this is the sound that you hear during that second. Right? It's kind of a arcadey type of sound. If you ever played a game, Splinter Cell, that's the sound that you hear when the visor goes down, like when you turn on night vision. It's also in the logo of Modern Warfare. Bomb pickup. This is a very arcadey type sound also, meaning that it doesn't actually sound like anything being picked up. Right? So very abstract kind of sound, and it can be a lot of different ideas. Bomb set down. This is a line of dialogue.
Bombs away.
So you don't have to say exactly what they say. You don't actually have to do it in a British accent. You could completely mimic it. You don't have to. You can say and come up with your own lines of dialogue. Just keep it nice and clean, family friendly, all ages appropriate, but certainly have fun with it. You can use a sound effect. You can use your own voice, however you would like to approach it. Enemy death. This is when the enemy gets hurt. When I think you just hit them once and they fall off the level. So very short. These are grunts or exertions. Right. Very simple sound there. So you can just open up the microphone and do a couple of those. Gunshots. Now, that is for when the bazooka blasts or the rocket launcher. And it's not a rocket launcher sound. It's not a bazooka blast sound. It is a gunshot sound. And that works here because you need a sound that is kind of short overall. Since the player can hit the button very, very fast and fire off these rockets quickly, you don't need a really long sound. Like if you had something that went and like took 3 seconds or 5 seconds to fire, then the player would hit 4 or 5 of them in a second, and well, it's probably still fast. 2 or 3 of them in a second, and they would stack on top of each other. So you want a sound that's relatively short overall for this kind of bazooka blast. Health pickup is another abstract sound. So that can be pretty much anything that you would, any approach that you want to take. Jump 1, 2, and 3.
Huh. Huh. Huh.
So jump sounds. Those are the jump up portion, not the land portion. Sometimes what I'll hear is like feet hitting the ground, and that's not the right approach. Sound is played when the character jumps up, so you want that sort of kind of sound. Ouch, 1, 2, and 3. This is when your character takes damage.
Oh, ow, ow.
Very simple. Open up the mic, do a couple ouches, and taunts 1, 2, and 3.
Keep it classy. Bring it on. I say, old bean.
Keep it classy. Bring it on. I say, old bean. So listen to them a couple times. You can say the same thing. Come up with your own lines. Have fun with it mostly. Make it your own project. But yeah, keep it lighthearted, family friendly overall, and enjoy. So a lot of these. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It could be 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Could be 15 of the 18 sounds done with lines of dialogue or a microphone that's open. So go ahead, set those up, edit the sounds down. Then you will put them in the game. And just like you put your music in here and the original sound effects were in here, you'll just delete all of those and put in your own files. They have to, if it doesn't work, if a sound doesn't play, check the audio file. It needs to be named exactly correctly according to the asset list. It needs to be named with the correct sample rate and bit depth, number of channels, all of the specifications of the file. Make sure you bounced what you thought you did. And typically that's where the problems end up. So once you get everything bounced and put it into the game, test it out, play through the game a couple of times, make sure everything is working, go back, make any tweaks or changes to your music or the sound effects. And then the next assignment, after you've got your sounds created, is your game capture. And you will do a video capture of your music and sound effects working in the game. So step one is to get everything in the game tested, make sure it sounds exactly like you want it to, exactly what you want to show off. And then we're going to use QuickTime and an application called Loopback in order to capture the video and audio from your game project. So the game is going to, let's start here. You're going to use QuickTime to do a video capture. More than likely, in some previous class, you have used QuickTime to capture something on your screen or capture the webcam or something like that. And so, again, we are going to use QuickTime to do a screen recording. And when you launch QuickTime and you go to File and choose Screen Recording, this window pops up. And it'll allow you to record your whole screen. It'll allow you to record a portion of your screen or just a game window or whatever you drag around for the screen capture. But it does not, by default, allow you to capture the audio. QuickTime, by default, expects that your audio is going to come from some external source. More than likely, the internal microphone on your computer. Maybe if you have one of the older laptops that still has a line input into it, it would expect that. But mostly, it expects the sounds to come from somewhere outside of the computer. But we want to capture all of our audio from inside of the computer from another application. And so we need to use a piece of software called Loopback, which is a virtual audio cable from one game application into our video capture application. And Loopback is free for us to use. Excuse me. Free for us to use, with the limitation that after 15 minutes it starts introducing noise. But your video captures are only going to be around a minute long, so really shouldn't cause any issue. If you've used an application like Soundflower, or if you still use Soundflower, I guess you could use that if you're all familiar with how that works. But Loopback is sort of an updated version of it. So the first thing you're going to do is go to download Loopback. And that is, there's a, hold on a sec. There is a, sorry, there's a website that you can download loopback from. And you can go to the website rogueamoeba.com. I love, even their headline says it's a strange name, but they make great software. And they actually used to work on Soundflower for quite a bit, but eventually went away and they introduced Loopback. The full version is $99. You don't need the $99 version. You need the free download. You download this and an application that looks like this. New in version. Oh, look at that. Not now. Actually, when you open this, it's going to look like this. Now, with this assignment, you get a PDF that describes a lot of what I'm about to describe here. You also get a series of steps, a workflow PDF that goes through all the steps that we are describing. So it'll have you download and install Loopback with the link of where that is. There's the application that we just took a look at. So all of these steps are outlined in the workflow PDF. We are going to, in Loopback, you're going to create a new virtual device. So Loopback is known as a virtual audio cable. It is basically like an audio cable. If I need to go from my guitar into my guitar amp, I would take a cable and go out of my guitar into my guitar amp, or out of my microphone into my microphone preamp. There's a cable that connects two things together. Well, a virtual audio cable will connect the output of one piece of software into the input of another piece of software that can record audio. So QuickTime can record audio, and it can record the screen at the same time. So that's what we are going to use. I'm going to create one new virtual device, and I need to choose my application. And to do this, I'm going to go, I just placed the game on my desktop for now. Wherever you have everything installed, you can navigate there, open up 2D Platformer, and that says to connect 2D Platformer into Loopback and onto wherever else it's going to go. I don't want it to mute. I do want to be able to hear it, and so this is just going to go out of, well, for the broadcast, I'll do it out here, do it through this audio device, but whatever you actually listen to, have your speakers plugged into, or maybe your headphones or whatever. So once you do that, then you can go into QuickTime and choose your audio input. So you'll see here that when I hit this little down arrow, I get a couple of different options. And one of those options is Loopback. And I can select Loopback there, and that will take the output of 2D Platformer and go into my screen recording. Now, I go open Loopback. No, sorry. I go and launch the game. And hit play here. All right, and you can see that I don't have any audio in here. Why don't I have any audio? My 2D platformer game. Select my game application. The one on my desktop, yes. Monitor through, sure. And, oh, I know. I probably need to close QuickTime. Oops, I think I just closed myself too. Whatever. Let's try that again. I think I freaked QuickTime out. Hold on. Oh, not new movie. Move that out of the way. New screen recording. Loopback. There. Now you can see when I it also has levels going into um, QuickTime here so that I can actually record this. So then when you do a screen recording here, it tells you to either select the whole screen or a portion of your screen. Let me jump back. Not there. Jump back. No, not there. Where am I jumping to? Here. Okay. So you set up loopback. You set the input to be a 2D platformer. You open QuickTime, and you set up QuickTime. Set up the input of the input into QuickTime to be loopback audio. And then you click record, and you can record either your full screen or a portion of your screen. You want to make the recordings as clean as possible, meaning that if it's only in a window, just record the window. Sometimes I see, I mean, more than likely, a client doesn't need to see your messy desktop in the background or some crazy desktop picture that you have. So you want to make it as clean and tight as possible. You can also let's do this. Where did I lose it? You can go into this window. If the game is running slowly or it's glitching or having any problems, you can reduce the screen resolution here. You can try to adjust the graphics quality, but more than likely it's not going to make too much of a difference because the graphics of 2D platformer is not all that taxing overall. I typically like to run it in a window, but if you uncheck this, it'll run full screen. So that might be another approach to get a clean recording. Clean video recording, I guess. So once you have everything set up, then you just record. Really, the most difficult part of this assignment is getting it all set up and making it work. Once it all is routed correctly and everything is playing back properly, then it's really just playing the game and making it work. So the once you have everything set up, here's the information about windowed and full screen. Then you hit the record button and you go ahead and play back your game, and you really want to just show off your music and sound effects in the best way. I am not grading you so much on the content of your video, but as the process that you got it all set up and it's working. That means that you've done the sound design, done the music, put it into the game, tested it, made any revisions, set up a video capture, and captured both video and sound. So I'm certainly not grading you on your ability to play the video game. Certainly not grading you on your ability to play well or get the highest score or fastest time or anything like that. So you're really there just to show off your music and sound effects as best as you can. So maybe you go down to the bottom here and die a few times so that we can hear the ending of the music and how it resolves. And shoot and jump and try to just trigger as many of the sounds as you can. Generally, the videos are going to be, I say about 60 seconds. If you can keep it around there, that's fine. Somewhere between 60 to 90 seconds should be enough time to demonstrate everything you need. We don't need 3 or 4 or 5 or 10-minute long opuses of your game music. Most clients are not going to stick around that long anyway. So short and sweet and show off everything that you want to. Then when you're done, you just exit out of the game, you stop the screen recording, you save it and name it according to the assignment, and then double check it. This is the main thing of where people lose points with this assignment, is that they never double check their work. The audio is missing. It's either silent or something that happens often is that they just don't use loopback or don't set it up, and they use the internal microphone. So I hear them like breathing in the background and clicking on the keyboard, which is really creepy. or I hear their dog barking in the background, or their family like washing dishes or something, or the TV is on in the background, or whatever. But it's not the content of the video. So double check the videos, please. Watch the videos. If there's any issues, then that's where you recognize the problems and where you can fix it. Other tips: clear off your desktop as best as you can. I don't know if you ever noticed, but my desktop is just blank as possible. Get rid of all this stuff here. Don't use. Go away. Go away. So yeah, my desktop is as blank as possible. I do have crazy desktops otherwise, but the only thing anybody needs to see is just a nice, clean, efficient desktop. You'd be surprised on how much that matters to people. Oh, hide the. You can do things like hide the dock, so that doesn't pop up. I mean, you don't have to do all of this stuff. Again, this is just making it as a clean and most professional kind of portfolio video as you can. You can change the resolutions of your screen. You can change the resolution of the game to make things work a little bit smoother for either high or low resolution captures. If of anything in this class, this game capture is going to have the chance of making your computer chug the most, meaning it working hard and I mean, you're running the game and the video capture at the same time. Some newer computers handle it no problem, and actually most people's computers handle it no problem. But every once in a while, if it starts to, like I said, chug or the video gets jittery or like stutters or skips, that is certainly fine for the purpose of the grade and the assignment. But we don't want the music to break up or to stutter or to drop out or anything like that. So if you're having any sort of technical issues getting all of this stuff to work, getting the music to work in the game, getting the video capture to work or loop back to work or something like that, please reach out and contact us and let us know. Then once you have everything done and completed and you triple check the video, everything's fine, then you're going to post it up to YouTube. There's a couple of instructions just how to submit it there and then post it up on FSO. Again, most clients and game developers and pretty much everybody on the internet is lazy and they don't want to download a video. They just want to click on a link and it take them to a YouTube video or some streaming site. So you're gonna want to make it as easy as possible for people to check out. Then the third assignment of this week is known as the composition description. Available on FSO. This is where you're going to be turning in your video capture, and it's where you will kind of summarize and give an assessment of your composition. So hold on a second. Let me just take a quick pause here. Talking too much. Need some water. Okay, so this is a 10-question quiz. Not so much of a traditional quiz because you have all the answers because it's your composition. Really, it's just the means for me to ask all the questions and gather the information from your composition. So some of this is submitting the material from the assignment. Some of this is giving me information about your composition. You can also submit material for revisions at this point. All right. So it's a 10-question test. The last two questions, 11 and 12, are unweighted, and those are set up for revisions, and we'll talk about that. So here is the overall approach to this. Question one is the video capture provide a YouTube link of the 2D platformer game composition, game capture. So the actual capture assignment is unweighted, but it is required. You just don't turn it in there. And it specifies in the assignment You don't need to turn anything in there. It's all turned in this composition description. Then you're going to provide a screenshot of your production session so I can see your overall approach. Give me information about the melody and harmony. What key are you in? What chord progression are you using for your main loop cues? What is the tempo and time signature of your music? So rhythmically, what's your approach? Then you're going to list out the instrumentation. What instruments did you use? Allows me to discuss the instruments used. How many instruments did you use? So when I listen to it, I can identify what I'm talking about. Like, oh, I hear this lead instrument, and I can reference and say, oh, that's a this particular synth, or I can hopefully clarify some things if necessary with a list of all the instruments from intros, main loops, and endings. Then you'll provide screenshots of your intros. I can listen to the music, provide any assessment for those. Same thing with your main loops. I can check that they loop. I can check that they are set up and everything's named properly, and make any comments about the composition. Ending cues, look at the shape, make sure that they end in silence, and overall that they are set up properly. Then you are going to take all of the bounced files and set them up in a particular way very similar to the game. So that the way that this works is you have intro 1 connected to main loop 2 connected to ending 3. Then we do ending 2, main loop 3, no, intro 2, main loop 3, ending 1, intro 3, main loop 1, ending 2. So it's basically all three combinations, but in different orders, so that you can listen to them, see how they're supposed to sound, test them out, make any observations. Also, there is some written information. Make sure you do both part A and B here, so that you give me information of. It's basically from your point of view. Not only is it just the screenshot, but tell me how it sounds. Identify any issues. Identifying an issue isn't necessarily a reason to take off points. It might be something I addressed somewhere else, but I'm looking for your observation on how does it sound, how does it work together. And then the last one here is doing a screenshot of of a level meter on your main output. So it asks you to set up the level meter plugin on the stereo output of Logic, so that you can show me and set it to peak and RMS. Just kind of play through the loudest part of your composition and get a sense of the overall loudness of the mix. And then it also gives me an opportunity to discuss if anything's out incorrectly set up with the mix, something's weird with volume or pan, or something's buried in reverb or some other effect. We can address that there. And as I mentioned, question 11 and 12 are set up for opportunities of revision. They're 0 points, which means that they're not required. They're entirely optional. But if there's anything from your game composition or 2D platformer that is needing revision, that needs updating, after you get your grades and your feedback, you can make any changes and resubmit all 9 of your 2D platformer composition files, or all of the looping music files. Oh, looks like I need to update a graphic here. So these are for revisions. Please resubmit all of the materials from your revisions. Don't just submit just the revised files, so I have one full version that I can grade. So that is what's upcoming in week 2. You have the sound design for 2D platformer. You have the game capture once everything is in the game and tested, and then kind of a post-mortem final assessment of everything in the composition description. So hopefully that gives you some good insight into what you have coming up for this week. I'm going to stick around for a few minutes after class if you have any questions about either your game composition or the new assignments, anything you want to discuss, please let me know. Otherwise, we'll wrap it up here, and we will meet again on Friday. We'll have an open session there. I'll have an archive ready to go, and we can discuss any topics that you would like to discuss. All right. Here in the chat, how do you search for group sounds on Weststar Music? I am going to guess that when you say groups of sounds, or when you say group sounds, maybe you're referring, when I was discussing, to go searching out for a group of sounds, meaning that that's, you don't type in a group into, well, into Weststar. Basically, what I'm referring to is identifying all of the similar sounds, like bomb sounds. That's a group of sounds. Yeah, I mean more of a group of sounds. So I need bomb sounds. So I'm going to search out, and I'm going to go type bomb and explosion and debris and I don't know, electronics, or just go find certain types of sounds, not specifically typing group or anything in to Weststar. That's more of what I'm referring to. All right. All right. Thanks a lot, and I will see you again next round.